You are about to embark on a tour of some of southern Utah's most spectacular scenery that formed as a result of three of the iconic regions of the Southwest: the Colorado Plateau, the Mojave Desert, and the Great Basin, all joining together in this one place near the city of St. George. Hopefully, you've already seen our video presentation that explains how the junction or convergence of these three regions has influenced the scenery here. If you haven't, you might want to watch it first before watching this tour. Look for the link in the upper right corner of your screen or in this video's description. You can also search for Triple Junction of Southern Utah on YouTube. Each of the three physiographic regions has its own unique ecosystem, geology, and climate. All around the St. George area, traces of all three regions can be found, and that's what this tour is going to do: show you where to find all the various geologic features discussed in the other video so that you can go see them yourself by using our recommended route. Along with seeing the specific features of the Triple Junction, our tour will also visit many examples of textbook geology. People who study the science of geology love coming here because in most places, trees, flora, and development cover and hide examples of geology and the resultant scenery. But not here. Those examples are in plain sight all over the St. George area. We've also created a GPX file that is available for download from our website blog that plots all these features and places to visit on a map. That way, you can load them onto Gaia GPS or any other mapping app and find these places using your mobile device. Because there is so much to cover, we'll be splitting this tour up into two separate videos. The first video will cover places on the west side of the Hurricane Fault. The second video will cover places on the east side, where the Colorado Plateau begins. For those of you who would like to enhance your visit to the places we talk about in these videos, we will provide information about local tour guide companies at the end of the second video. Having a personal guide who knows the area well and can explain and point out what you're looking at is the next level of experiencing this fascinating geologic area. One more thing before we get started. If you only follow the route we recommend and don't take any of the optional side trips we mention or spend too much time looking around at each stop, the tour should take about 6 to 8 hours. But there is a lot to see at each stop, so to see and explore all or some of it could take a full day or two. It's your choice. All right, let's get started. We'll be using a combination of both Google Earth and animated maps using Gaia GPS to show you where these different places are found. First, let's take a look at an overview of the tour. Here's a map of the St. George area in southwest Utah. Here's Arizona, and Nevada is just 10 miles to the west. We're going to start near Snow Canyon State Park over here. First, we'll look at these cinder cones located just north of Snow Canyon and discuss the reasons why they're here and how they influenced this area. Northeast of the cinder cones, right here, is a good view of the Pine Valley Mountains, which we'll continually see throughout this tour. If you've already watched the Triple Junction video, you may recall that this mountain range is a unique geologic formation that also influenced a lot of the scenery in the Triple Junction area. Next, we'll look down into Snow Canyon to see the result of the area's most prominent geologic formations, mainly the Navajo sandstone, that has been put through the geologic blender on the west side of the Hurricane Fault, plus the basalt flows from those cinder cones that overlay the sandstone. Here is the first possible side trip you can take. There's a lot more to see if you go into Snow Canyon itself and explore this special area to see some of its unique scenery. We'll then head east. Go north on Interstate 15 in St. George. Then take Highway 9 to Hurricane, which is exit 16. At a half-mile past the first traffic light on Highway 9, we'll take a look at the Virgin Anticline. We'll then turn left at the second traffic light to continue following the Anticline and see the spectacular scenery around Quail Creek Reservoir shaped by the Anticline. Next, we'll drive up to the 1880s mining boomtown of Silver Reef to get some great views of the Triple Junction area and its surrounding geology. From here, we'll be able to see all three regions from one vantage point. Here's another opportunity for a side trip to poke around and explore the old mining area here. After Silver Reef, we'll take a short journey down into an area called Babylon. Along the way, we'll see a lot of the geologic formations typical of this area, along with evidence of both prehistoric animals and people that once roamed here. Next is a close-up and dramatic view of the Hurricane Cliffs, which is near exit 27 on I-15, also known as Anderson Junction. There's a lot to point out at this spot. From here, we'll head down Highway 17 to Tokerville, then turn left and head east on Highway 9 in Verkin. Our next stop is the Verkin Overlook. We'll be standing right on top of the Hurricane Fault and almost at the center of the Triple Junction. Here again, we'll have a great view of all three of those physiographic regions. From this point on, we'll be on the Colorado Plateau, and this is where the second half of the video tour begins. We'll climb a few of the steps of what's known as the Grand Staircase, where each step is an individual formation within the Colorado Plateau. Along this part of the tour, the views will be outstanding. Our paved road turns to dirt as we traverse Smith Mesa, which offers great views of Zion National Park. After taking in the views from Smith Mesa, we'll climb another step and head up to Cave Valley to see even more interesting geology and scenery. Our tour continues back down to Highway 9, where the tour ends, making a few more stops along the way. If you still have time to spend, make your way to Zion Canyon and its east entrance to see more spectacular scenery. Okay, let's head over to our first stop. And that first stop is reached by taking Highway 18 north out of St. George, past Snow Canyon, to visit two cinder cones known together as the Santa Clara Volcanic Field. Here's a satellite view of the St. George area. Let's zoom in a little closer. As mentioned, we'll head north of here and zoom into two cinder cones here and here, right next to Highway 18. We'll then swing back around facing south toward Snow Canyon to provide a better profile view of the two cinder cones. This is the cinder cone we'll focus on. Cinder cones are mini volcanoes that only erupted a few times, then never again. Real volcanoes, like Mount St. Helens, erupt over and over again and over a long period of time, resulting in the creation of large mountains. Cinder cones usually only form small hills or a single crater like you see here. If you feel up to it, you can hike this cinder cone to the top. There's a trail, but it's steep and difficult due to the loose nature of the cinder material. But it does provide great views of this area. Here's some scenes of hiking the cinder cone. Further up Highway 18, about 5.5 miles, is another cinder cone. This one is a bit bigger. It's called the Vail Volcano. Incidentally, the nearby town of Vail, which is known for its pies, offers what they call a volcano pie. It's made of chocolate and butterscotch and is one of my favorites. All right, back to the first cinder cone. We're now going to head back down Highway 18. A little over a half a mile, there's a parking area and trailhead on the right. This is an optional hike to a wonderful bowl of swirling white Navajo sandstone called White Rocks Amphitheater. It's about a 1-mile round-trip hike if you'd like to take it in during this tour. See our separate video and blog post on backroadswest.com for more information. The hike offers an up-close look at the thickest formation in southwest Utah, the Navajo Sandstone. There's also some great views to enjoy here. From the trailhead, we'll continue down the highway for just under a mile and a half to the Snow Canyon Scenic Overlook, as it is labeled on Google Maps. This overlook provides a great view of rock and geologic layers that got twisted and turned from being on the west side of the Hurricane Fault. None of it is in orderly horizontal layers like what is found on the Colorado Plateau on the east side of the fault. Most of what you'll see here is the Navajo Sandstone Formation, which are literally petrified sand dunes. Notice that here in Snow Canyon, the white sandstone is intermixed with a reddish sandstone, showing proof that this formation got twisted and turned. On the Colorado Plateau, mainly in Zion Canyon, you can see that the top level of the Navajo sandstone is white, and the bottom is more reddish colored, not intermixed. As you look at other outcrops of Navajo sandstone west of the fault, you'll see much of it is twisted and turned, like this, such as above Silver Reef at a place called Candy Cliffs. All right, we're going to fly down towards St. George, then swing back to the north to get a good look at the Pine Valley Mountains. As mentioned in the Triple Junction video, this is actually called the Pine Valley Laccolith, which is kind of like a volcano wannabe. It was a huge magma chamber that never erupted. Instead, it cooled and hardened underground, then was later uplifted to the surface. During that uplift, it heavily affected the area's geology and formations. There's a lot more behind the story of the Pine Valleys, more than I can squeeze into this tour. It also created a lot of fractures in the Earth's surface here, most likely adding to the number of volcanic eruptions in the area. Along with these fractures, the Hurricane Fault, which we'll visit later, was also behind many of the area's cinder cone eruptions. Magma simply followed these fractures up to the Earth's surface. One interesting thing to notice about halfway up the Pine Valleys are these reddish outcroppings here. See how they're all at the same level? Believe it or not, this has all been identified as Claron Formation. What's Claron known for? Bryce Canyon National Park, Cedar Breaks National Monument, and so many other places. All of that colorful scenery is all made up of the same Claron Formation. When the Pine Valley Laccolith uplifted, it pushed everything else on top of it up. That included everything from the Navajo sandstone layer and all the layers above it, including the very top formation of the Colorado Plateau, the Claron, which is very prominent in Bryce Canyon. These little outcrops of Claron seen here are all that's left after eons of erosion have erased the rest. Throughout this tour, you'll see the Pine Valley Mountains from many different angles, as they are one of the highest features in the area. Next up, the Virgin Anticline. Just for clarification, the name Virgin comes from the name of an explorer that passed through here in the early 1800s. His name was Thomas Virgin. The river wandering through the Triple Junction area was initially named after Thomas, and that's where the Anticline got its name. We'll now travel to a few good spots to see the Anticline. Take I-15 north out of St. George, then take the Highway 9 Hurricane exit, which is located here on the map. We're going to drive to here, which is about 1.5 miles after exiting I-15. You'll see this big turnout on the right, just before the highway begins to go downhill. Walk past this Hurricane Valley sign and up to this ridge to see this view down into the Anticline. Looking down the highway, you'll notice the Anticline's western ridge on the left and the other ridge on the right. The opposite of a syncline, an anticline is an upwarp, fold, or bulging in the Earth's surface. It's where movements or stresses in the Earth's crust pushed against each other, and where weaker material existed, the surface bulged up, such as what you see here. That bulging action pushed up all the layers above it. Then, many of them eroded away over the ages. Here's a picture from the other video showing where other formations were pushed up to before they were eroded away. Formations that are visible here are mostly the Moan Copy, but above it was the Chinle, Monavi, Kayenta, and Navajo sandstone. Another great place to view the virgin anticline is from the dam of Quail Creek Reservoir. That's reached by turning left at the second traffic light on Highway 9 from I-15. The overlook is 1 mile from the signal on the right. Here, you'll be in the center of the anticline with a great view of all the surrounding geology and resulting scenery. On the other side of the reservoir, sedimentary layers in the Moan Copy Formation clearly show the folds of the anticline at its center axis. Another great viewpoint of the surrounding geology is to take a short but steep side trip hike up to the top of the ridge on the west side of the reservoir to the site of a historic aviation navigational arrow. Looking to the east, you can see over the town of Hurricane, which is in the Mojave Desert. Just beyond the town's eastern edge is the Hurricane Fault. You can easily make out the vertical cliffs here. As you pan to the right or the south, you can see how the cliffs get higher. These are also known as the Hurricane Cliffs. These cliffs are the border between the Mojave Desert and the Colorado Plateau. This viewpoint also does a great job of showing how the Colorado Plateau is higher than the Mojave Desert due to the massive uplift that occurred. Another thing to notice here is the organized horizontal layering visible on the plateau beyond the Hurricane Fault. Compare it to the Mojave Desert in the foreground, and you can clearly see that the landscape is all jumbled up. Okay, from Quail Creek, we'll continue our journey north on Highway 318 along the reservoir back to I-15, and then turn right. All the ridges parallel to I-15 here are all on account of the anticline's uplift. Notice how the ridges are all tilting, or what geologists call dipping, to the west, whereas the steeper sides point to the east. This road here leads to the Red Cliffs Recreation Area, which is another scenic side trip from our tour. It takes you to a canyon that cuts into the Navajo sandstone, uplifted by the west side of the anticline. There's a popular hike to a waterfall and other scenic attractions here. Now, on to Silver Reef. For those of you who watched the other video, do you remember what reef means? Yes, it's the same reference that's used for something found in an ocean. A reef is a barrier, and here, these long, sharp ridges were barriers to the early pioneers in their wagons. Keep in mind that these reefs are all the same parallel ridges that are outcrops of various formations, such as Kayenta and Navajo, that have all been uplifted by the virgin anticline. Silver Reef is found by continuing down the main road paralleling I-15. Continue on that road through the town of Leeds, then follow the signs to Silver Reef. The museum at Silver Reef is a fun side trip here that offers a great look into this area's silver mining past. It also offers some great views of all three regions. Right now, you're seeing a sweeping view looking from north to the east over the Colorado Plateau, to the south and the Mojave Desert. After visiting the artifacts inside the museum, continue the side trip by roaming around this small area to see the various reefs, abandoned mines, and the big views to the east. Interestingly, Silver Reef is one of the only places on Earth where precious metals such as silver and gold have been found in sandstone. Miners and geologists always thought this was an impossibility, but not here. Those precious metals were all found in the 100 to 150 foot thick layer of what's called Springdale sandstone. It's all uplifted here in those reefs, but later in our tour, after we cross onto the Colorado Plateau, we'll see the Springdale sandstone again as a flat, uniform layer as it was originally created. Look for our various videos on our YouTube channel that showcases and provides tours of Silver Reef. From Silver Reef, we'll take an out and back dirt road to a place called Babylon to see some more geologic scenery. Babylon was a silver mining extension of Silver Reef. Head back under I-15. Then turn left onto the road we were on that passed through Leeds. In just over half a mile, look for a road that goes to the right. This is Babylon Road. Before heading down this road, however, make sure you have a vehicle with four-wheel drive. You won't think you'll need it going down into Babylon, but you'll certainly need it to climb out in the deep sand. The 5-mile trip into Babylon offers yet more geologic splendor. Where Silver Reef was on the west side of the Anticline, Babylon Road is on the east side. So all of the reefs that you see here are angled in the other direction. Look for the Babylon Arch Trailhead turnoff. This 1-mile out and back road leads to a trailhead where you can immerse yourself into a jumbled up sea of colorful Navajo sandstone. You'll need both high clearance and four-wheel drive to drive this very rough road, or you can walk it instead. Heading further down the main road, you'll dip down into more geologic formations, mainly Kayenta and Chinle. The latter is known for its petrified wood. When the road reaches the bottom, dinosaur tracks can be found imprinted into one of the formations. The road ends at the site of the Babylon Mill. This was another place where area silver mines sent their ore to be milled. Unlike other mills from Silver Reef, this one had the Virgin River next to it for power. Towards the end of the tour, we'll get another view of Babylon and its unique geology from this vantage point on the other side of the Virgin River in the town of Hurricane. From Babylon, we'll head back to the road that parallels I-15 and turn right. We'll be getting close to this very obvious geologic feature called Black Ridge. In about 3 miles, Highway 17 is reached. Turn left, then in a short distance, turn right just before the on-ramp for I-15 northbound. You'll see this view. Black Ridge, named after the black basalt, also goes by 3 other names: Hurricane Cliffs, Kanara Anticline, and the Kanara Fold. Whatever you want to call it, one thing is for sure: this is a great example of what this part of the Hurricane Fault did: cause uplift and pushed up the Colorado Plateau. What's really special about this particular feature is that layers, or formations, visible from below the rim of the Grand Canyon are also visible here. They are roughly the Toraweep, Quantaweep Sandstone, and Pacoon Dolomite formations. Here's where the same formations are roughly on Black Ridge. Incidentally, the Kaibab Limestone Formation, mentioned in the callouts, is found at the very top of both Black Ridge and the Grand Canyon. We'll learn more about the Kaibab at our next stop. The uplift that you see before you occurred very rapidly in geologic time. The elevation of the road is roughly 3,800 feet. The radio towers you see up here are at 5,200 feet. That's an offset of 1,400 feet, basically a quarter of a mile, or 470 meters. Remember that the Hurricane Fault is known as what geologists call a normal fault. It's a fault where two blocks are sliding up and down, past each other, almost vertically. Where we're standing, the ground is dropping, and the ground on the other side of the fault is rising. The opposite type of fault, where two blocks are sliding past each other horizontally, is called a strike-slip fault. The San Andreas Fault is a classic example of a strike-slip fault. Now that you know that you're looking at a normal fault, look at the black basalt or lava rock at the top of Black Ridge near the radio towers. When the basalt was molten lava, it flowed there from the other side of Interstate 15. Think about that for a minute. How in the heck is that possible? We're standing 1,400 feet lower than those radio towers. The answer lies in a volcanic eruption that occurred about 1 million years ago. About 6 miles north of here, close to the base of the Pine Valley Mountains, a volcanic eruption occurred, and lava flowed several miles south and east, even past where we're standing now. Lava from all volcanoes have a sort of DNA. Geologists have been able to prove that the DNA of the lava from the volcano north of here matches the DNA of the lava on top of Black Ridge. The lava dried and turned to basalt. Then the Hurricane Fault continued its rapid uplift of both this new basalt and the Colorado Plateau behind it, as it has been for the past 20 million years or so. Therefore, what you see in front of you uplifted in a little less than 1 million years. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Another aspect to this ridge is that it is also known as the Conara Anticline. Just like the Virgin Anticline we visited earlier in this tour, forces within the Earth pushed these formations together and caused them to bulge upward. Now, geologists don't say this. It's just an observation of mine. But is the Virgin Anticline at play here? Let's project its path to where we saw it, then to the north, paralleling I-15. Where does it lead us to? You guessed it, right here. As you can see in this Google Earth animation, the anticline is eroded away here near Highway 9, but isn't eroded the further north we look. You can see the surface bulge here, thanks to the erosion-resistant Shunnerump conglomerate, which didn't allow anything below it to erode away. We'll see this layer closer up later in our tour. So, could the forces of the Virgin Anticline have actually pushed up and exaggerated the uplift here along the Hurricane Fault? Maybe. Some geologists report that this is actually a separate feature, possibly related to the Virgin Anticline called the Pintura Anticline. The research continues. From the top of Black Ridge, near the radio towers, you'll see this fantastic view showing some of the areas we just covered. Looking south, you can also see traces of the Hurricane Fault and its cliffs heading to the Grand Canyon. If you decide to take a side trip up to this view, know that this road to the top of Black Ridge is not an easy task. You need a heavy-duty, high-clearance, four-wheel drive vehicle. The road is slow going and will add considerable time to this tour. Along the way, though, you'll experience Verkin Canyon and Tokerville Falls, a popular local attraction. All right, from here we'll head south on Highway 17 to the town of Verkin, about 6 miles. Turn left at the traffic light where Highway 9 heads east to Zion National Park. Soon, Highway 9 begins to climb this hill, which is our old friend, the Hurricane Fault. This hill also marks where we'll leave the Mojave Desert and enter the Colorado Plateau. Starting with this hill, our tour will now climb a series of geologic stair steps, which are a series of formations similar to the Grand Staircase about 60 miles east of here. Here's a cross-section of the formations, or rather the staircase we'll be climbing, starting at this point in the tour. Here's where we are now, and here's where we're going to end up inside Zion National Park at Cave Valley. 2.5 miles from the traffic light, look for the turnoff to Verkin Overlook. Take this bumpy dirt road 1.5 miles to the overlook. This overlook is situated on top of the Hurricane Fault. It provides a 360-degree view of the Triple Junction, looking at the Mojave Desert, Great Basin, and the Colorado Plateau. Let's do a complete 360-degree look using the fabulous flying camera. Everything east of the overlook is the Colorado Plateau. After climbing up on top of the Hurricane Fault and looking eastward, did you notice how the landscape is all made up of horizontal layers? That is indicative of the Colorado Plateau. You won't find that looking west from the Hurricane Fault. Zion National Park is located here. This is one of its landmarks, West Temple. It's mentioned in the Triple Junction video as the landmark you can see from all over. Over here is Gooseberry Mesa, which is world famous with mountain bikers because of a layer I mentioned earlier, the Shinnerump conglomerate. Many of the mesas you see here are topped with it. Here is a series of small cinder cones that sit right on top of the fault. To the right of the fault is the Mojave Desert. From here, we can see far into the Arizona Strip. As we continue panning to the west, we can see more cinder cones that erupted. These all erupted due to magma finding weaknesses and cracks in the Earth's crust created by the Hurricane Fault and other related faults. Here are the Pine Valley Mountains in the beginning of the Great Basin. Beyond the Pine Valleys begins a series of mountains and valleys that trend north-south. Heading west, the long, repeating series of basins and ranges reach all the way into California. Panning to the north now, we see our last stop, Black Ridge, and now we're back on the Colorado Plateau. This prominent mesa is called Hurricane Mesa, which our tour will be climbing shortly. Another thing to notice as we head east from here are all the flat-topped mesas. You won't see flat mesas like this to the west. Many of the mesas in the Colorado Plateau are flat because of a caprock layer on top that is resistant to erosion. We'll talk more about this when we climb Hurricane Mesa. Incidentally, we're standing on top of what's called the Kaibab Limestone Formation. It's the same white-colored formation that you saw previously at the top of both Black Ridge and the Grand Canyon. This is also a very erosion-resistant layer and is literally the caprock that has preserved layers below the Grand Canyon's rim. The Kaibab covers a large swath of land across Arizona and Utah. Geologists say it was deposited about 270 million years ago and is around 500 feet thick. It was the bottom of a sea floor, and many fossils of organisms that lived on the sea bottom can be found in this formation. Another interesting fact to notice here is the location of the same formation at two different places that will demonstrate the 5,000 foot or 1 mile offset of the Hurricane Fault. Looking east towards Zion, we see West Temple. The knob on top is made up of a formation called Temple Cap Formation. West Temple is at an elevation of about 8,000 feet. Looking west over the town of Verkin, we see this small hill with stripes called Sugarloaf. It's at an elevation of 3,000 feet, and it's also made up of Temple Cap Formation. The difference in elevation here is 5,000 feet, or roughly 1 mile. When you hear that the Colorado Plateau was pushed up vertically about 1 mile, here at this overlook is one of the only places where you can actually see proof of it. Before we leave the overlook, let's take a walk about 120 feet to the southeast. Here, we'll get this fantastic view of the Virgin River that dug a deep gorge into the Kaibab limestone called Timpaweep Canyon. Even though the Kaibab is resistant, it couldn't stand up to the forces of the Virgin River, just like the Navajo sandstone couldn't stand up to it, resulting in the creation of nearby Zion Canyon. Across the canyon, you'll see the remains of the Hurricane Canal. It was completed in 1904 and carried water from a diversion dam upstream to farmland south of the town of Hurricane. The hiking trail that hugs the old canal route is a great way to see Timpaweep Canyon up close. Okay, now that we're standing on top of the Hurricane Fault and transitioning over to the Colorado Plateau, this ends the first half of our video tour. Follow the link to the second part of the tour using the link above or the link in the comments below. If you're watching this video before part 2 is complete, be sure to subscribe to our channel to stay informed of when we post part 2 of this tour. Also, go to the backroadswest.com website to learn more about the guided tours available. Select this option, Creative Tour Guides. Then, on our travel guide website, select Tours, then Geology Tour. Scroll down the page to see its details in the tour's itinerary. Although watching these videos is an experience, nothing is better than actually seeing these places firsthand with an expert, explaining what you're seeing as you go along. It's the ultimate way to experience the amazing beauty and geologic wonder that is Utah.